Welcome to another episode of the Global Activation Party for Synchronistic Wealth, and we are so excited to have you back. We have gone through so many of my precious mentors already, and you've got to experience what lots of them do on the business side and on the energetic side. And right now, today, we are so honored and so happy to invite one of my favorite quantum experts, Ariadne, Avalon. And she is someone who ran her own summit on evolutionary healers and also is someone who is incredibly gifted at sensing lots of different elements in the quantum field. She lives from a place of source and is incredibly amazing at simply healing and clearing the pathway for healers, as well as spiritual entrepreneurs and people who are connected to a higher sense of source. She's an intuitive quantum alchemist and multidimensional healer. She offers spiritual facilitation and embodiment in solar feminine, Christus union consciousness, which she'll talk a little bit about later. And she is here to help humanity's collective awakening through current ascension cycles and offers new possibility and prosperity consciousness. She is two-time best-selling author, publisher, artist, and it's just an amazing soul to be around. So we've talked a lot about strategies and mindset and even energy work in our last couple of sessions. And today I want to bring it into spirituality and I want to bring it into a deeper level of healing. And the reason for this is because when we are aware of what our quantum field is, like what's happening in our quantum field, then we're also able to clear out more pathways for things in our reality, in our third dimensional reality to work. And if you're not familiar with that concept, don't worry, just imagine you're clearing out things in your life that you are unconscious of that can really support smoother movements of events. So let's put our hands together to welcome the expert and the amazing Ariadne Avalon.
Such a sweetheart. Thank you so much for your kind words and wonderful compliments. It is so lovely to be with you and be here and contribute to your tribe. It is a wonderful synergy. And you're holding such an incredible space for all of us to contribute to each other. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So tell me a little bit and share with our audience, how did you get on this path? Because you are someone who
Ooh.
is just so in tune and really marry, the prosperity consciousness with the quantum world. So where did you start? What was the middle? And how did you
Wow, that's
come
really
here?
interesting. Yeah, I wasn't really on track to get into healing at all in my life. I was really smart and I was going to be a professor at university and that whole kind of thing, right? And I did a lot of tree planting and worked in the forests, the decimated forests of British Columbia. And yeah, that felt amazing because I was working with the earth and, reseeding forests. And that just really spoke to my soul. So I did that for quite some time. But it was just like, I ended up having friends that were like, hey, can you give me a massage? Can you do some energy work on me? This whole type of thing. And it turned out that, I ended up giving them the best massages and ended up offering them healing without even intending to do so. And I heard people saying, oh, your energy is so wonderful. I want to hang out with you and all these other kinds of things, right? So this was something I was not ever conscious of that I was ever born with, right? So, I ended up falling into, pardon me, some really wild, past life training and multidimensional activation work one time in between, my seasons of tree planting. And it was kind of mind blowing, but I just found myself there and learning all of these things. And that even escalated my awareness and the healing that I could do for other people. And, was still at that age where I wanted to have fun and party and, didn't really take it so seriously. And did that for a few years. And finally, it sort of ended up coming to this point where it was like time for me to really end up, committing more to the healing that I was here to offer. And that really involved me actually healing myself. And there was a tremendous amount of stuff to heal in my own life too, right? So it was kind of like an up and down sort of experience. And I think what ends up happening is that there are, healers that have, vows where they have done work for people in past lifetimes and other timelines where they haven't been paid with money, right? They've been honored as people that are, revered in their tribe and are revered in their tribe, and, having to receive money for their work is, something they have to deal with too, right? So there's just some sort of quantum entanglement of, poverty unconsciousness that, prevents healers from really thriving initially when they step into that, right? So really had to deal with that whole kind of thing, and, sort of started working with Reiki, which is a sort of natural transition for a lot of healing people. And then, yeah, it was just this incredible journey where I landed, into taking quantum training, and thought that that was so incredible, and, worked with that and played with that, and, just continued to evolve and follow into other modalities that, I don't know, just took things to the next level, right? And, it was kind of an up and down sort of experience. And I ended up having this whole dark night of the soul where everything just sort of crashed right out because I wasn't truly in alignment with my higher purpose. And I was in, the energies of something that wasn't really honoring, God source intelligence. It was something that was really operating on a quantum level, right? So yeah, that, have I answered your question there?
Yeah, in some ways, yes. But then I had more questions emerge, so I'm going to ask you those as well. So talk a little bit about alignment, because I had a very
Mm,
similar experience, and so many of the speakers here, when we are
mhm,
discussing this, also have this experience of, this awakening moment, and then this experience of alignment. And what is this awakening alignment, for
mhm,
the audiences who don't know? And also,
mhm.
how does it feel in your body when you're aligned?
Yeah, so we do have this incredible purpose that we're here to share with humanity right now, right? And if we're really not in alignment with that, then, for me, everything just sort of like crashed out underneath my foundation, and I, was out for like 2 years having to, um, dismantle and recreate what I was truly in alignment with, and, that pure source cosmic intelligence. And that really involves moving beyond the creations of the third dimensional reality and its expectations and its ego motivations and all that sort of stuff, right? And it was this dark night of the soul, and many of us end up going through it, right? And I, just had faith and persevered through all of that recalibration, and worked on, all levels of my being, from the physical body to the spiritual to the mental to the emotional. Like, it was a full on transformational in the trenches of, all my pain, slogging through it, and then, servicing and coming out. And it was just like, once I was in that alignment with it, I knew that abundance was everywhere, and that I didn't even really have to think about needing to create it, because I had found the stream of consciousness that I was here to embody and what I was here to offer to humanity. And, things just ended up flowing beautifully, and, as beautifully as I could when we're in COVID pandemic, right? But I mean, yeah, everything just flowered, wonderfully. And, now people just end up flowing into my life, and they're, clients from all sort of realms or concentrations of focus, right? And, there's just downloads of information coming in through me for them, and, the synergy that just ends up occurring, right? And I mean, we're all evolving at the quickest ways, that haven't even been possible for humanity on earth, and you're experiencing it yourself too, right? And everything has its own consciousness and its own creative energy, just like this, beautiful summit that you're creating has, magical beings showing up and contributing to everybody that's viewing it, right? And you're, evolving and embodying more of your wisdom, in quantum ways every day, right? So that's how alignment, feels to me.
Yeah, so I love what you shared about the when people actually tap into their flow, and this is what we call synchronicity, right? Our title
Hmm.
of the summit is called Synchronistic Wealth, and it's really about tapping into that natural source, which is you, without the constructs and without the limitations of what we talked about as you were sharing, that poverty consciousness or anything that you don't know. And when you're without those limitations, that true flow is allowed to flow through you. And tell me about quantum. Like, how do you understand quantum, and why is it that when you were working on a quantum level, how is it different from, let's say, Reiki, body work, or any of the modalities that
Hmm.
you've also studied and implemented and had in your history of
Hmm.
toolkits?
Well, the thing is, when we look at the scientific explanation of quantum, it's like right down to that quantum particle level, right? So everything that occurs to us, whether it's, something that we end up picking up when we're children from our parents, or experiences that we have in our adulthood, or what's going on in the whole collective consciousness in regards to money, prosperity, poverty consciousness, all of that is imprinting us, right? And that imprints us, cellular, subcellular, molecular, subatomic, quantum nuclei, right into the space where energy becomes matter, right? So we need to be able to perceive where exactly the limitations are being held on what level. And also we have to, delete all of those down right to that morphogenetic resonance, right? When energy becomes matter, so that it's no longer affecting our field in any way. And at the same time, we can activate, regenesis, we can activate prosperity, we can activate whatever it is that our desires and goals are, right from birthing at that morphogenetic resonance into that quantic, impact, that particle level, all the way up into our multidimensional realities and consciousness too, right? And all of that ends up affecting everything that's going on in our 3D body without us even knowing it. So for example, we sit there and think, okay, my bank account is at this, and the reason why it's like this is because I haven't worked for 6 months, or whatever it is. But when we take a look at all the energies that are affecting our creations in our life, that might not be what is the primary weakness that is contributing to your bank account, right? Perhaps your family, has been used to making $85,000 a year, and you want to go into $250,000. And, there's this quantum imprinting that ends up happening on a genetic level, where we can't end up actually transcending, our family limits, our limitations there, because they're part of our tribe and we want to belong and all these other kinds of things, right? So once we can, delete that, reprogram that, move beyond that, then it's seeded for a new reality to end up occurring for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
morphogenetics. Define that a little bit.
Well, that's like a resonance field, right? So yeah, so that's also something that's happening on a quantum level, because we have the, vibrational frequency that's resonating out into the world, right? Whatever vibe we're at is going out into the world, and that's also seeding the essence for new universes and new possibilities to end up occurring, right?
Yes, and the other main point I wanted to also just to summarize what you were just saying, that every thought we have, no matter whether it's here or before, has that energetic frequency. And so what you were saying is that, you know, if that is on any layer of our being before it turns into matter, or maybe it already has turned into matter in our body, that
Mm-hmm.
that false belief system or that limitation in your
Mm-hmm.
wealth,
Mm-hmm.
in your ability to be aligned, or
Mm-hmm.
even your ability to feel trust in the alignment, can also sneak its way in there, and that prevents the alignment from actually happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you've got two sort of realities that you've created that are kind of in conflictual, universes, that one of them needs to be deleted, the one that you don't really want to occur, right? And it's like we are so afraid of being great and bright and contributing and stepping beyond collective consciousness, beyond our family, beyond our partners, and beyond where we've ever gone before. And all of that, once we perceive fear on this level is being held in the cells, you've inherited it from, and I'm only doing this because I move my hands when I do my work, right? Yeah, so I'm sort of already sort of playing with the energies. It's like, if we've got something going on an emotional level of our being, or a mental level of our being, we can delete that right down to the quantum energy to form, right? Birth transduction, right? So when it's born, and the birth transduction sequence is what we actually end up experiencing as quantum particles when we are born, through our mother, through her womb, into this reality, right? So everything that's been going on in the collective consciousness at that time is something she's holding in her beingness that imprints our quantum particular level too, right? So yeah, and reading the energy of all of that when I do sessions or I work with groups is how my work is done, and how things can really change very quickly once that energy is up and ready to be read and then transformed or alchemized.
Absolutely. There's so many directions this conversation can go because it's just such a rich and like such a rich source of map of where everything can lie. And as you're going through each of those layers,
Mhm.
there's so much that can be said around this. Why is it that things, how do I describe it? Like, how many places, and why is it that these quantum limitations can be in so many different places? They can be on the DNA level, they can be in a multidimensional space, and they
Mhm.
can be hidden in so many different places. Like, why do they exist in all of these places? And this might have something to do with our all multidimensionality. Describe a
Mhm.
little bit more about that. Like,
Mhm.
why do we exist in so many dimensions, and what do you perceive, and how does this limitation like exist in so many places?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with just being in the third dimensional reality and what we've been conditioned, mind controlled, and programmed to believe is real. And that has been something that's been occurring for millions of years, really, right? Like, so that's a lot of imprinting that ends up occurring as well. And we have multiple lifetimes, right? Other timelines that we're actually existing in, and other people end up live, even jumping into parallel timelines, and doing so many things are starting to awaken as humanity is starting to awaken, right? So we're going beyond this 3D skin suit, and realizing that everything around us has energy and life and particles and transformative capacity, depending on what we're resonating, what we're embodying, right down to the quantum level. And that's including our cosmic nature and our multidimensional nature, which is what we're here to do, is hold that Christ consciousness, that divine feminine Sophianic consciousness, here for humanity to elevate and heal and remember the God beings that we truly are, and really create from that source where lack is not part of our consciousness anymore. Poverty, inequality, war, all of these things that you see so readily going on in this 3D reality are not the truth and essence of who we truly be, right? And the reason why they've been amped up so intensely within these last couple of years is because of humanity's awakening, and the fact that our DNA is activating into higher strands, and everything is just exponentially evolving to quantum realms and multidimensional realms, that we have to move through all of the history of all the density that has been part of our realities, so that we can live in that vibrational field of love and those plasmic energies and those rays and frequencies that are just all around us, right?
It's beautiful, especially when I first started experiencing these different rays, and I first started experiencing these different vibrations, like how real these are, just as, just as our three-dimensional world, like how much we can actually feel it when we are
Hmm.
able to raise our sensitivities to these frequencies.
Hmm.
And so if you're not feeling any of these things and you're wondering like, oh, how come it doesn't work like this in my world and I don't resonate, don't worry, because it is a process of, unfolding and opening up. And as you heal more, there's more space also for these resonances and frequencies to reach you if you are feeling called to experience this at this moment in time.
Hmm.
So that's part of it as well. So let's talk about that DNA piece, right? A lot
Hmm.
of spiritual healers, energy workers, and also people who really are in this world, they talk about these like 12-strand DNAs and DNA, different DNA levels. What is that? And then when it does get activated, what's the effect of that on our lives and our missions or our work or who we be?
It's interesting because it's such a trending kind of occurrence going on with these DNA activations, this code, that code, this code, whatever, and you have to do the work to be able to really embody that too, right? So that work involves not only healing yourself on an emotional level and a mental program level, right? Because we already know that with epigenetics, where we've come from, right? What we've experienced in our life, what our families come from, that, even at that base level has affected our DNA, right? So, if our father has died of cancer, that's probably somewhere in our DNA too, right? It's not all this woohoo, I've got Christ consciousness DNA, it's out there, I got it, someone downloaded it into me. I'd be a little bit skeptical about that because, so many people end up doing all this spiritual bypassing without actually doing that, deep healing work, in regards to loving themselves and loving others and healing from, past traumas and whatever it is. Because when it comes to, prosperity creation and wealth creation, we have to realize that we're worthy. We have to realize that we're valuable. What we're here to offer humanity is a valuable contribution. And once we see our own value, then we're actually capable of receiving the wealth that we desire to create, the prosperity that we desire to create too, right? So and, the whole lack of worthiness is also something that we end up holding in our DNA, right? So if we work on that deep emotional healing and release unhealed emotion, that is going to be a huge catalyst to end up creating a more resilient DNA, and then also enabling us to be able to hold those higher frequencies from those other timelines, right? And those other multidimensional realms that is going to end up then seeding, our DNA to other strands and other possibilities. Have I answered your question there?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love how you've tied in the relationship between prosperity, consciousness, and where it's sitting on the DNA level and what's possible when
Mm-hmm.
healing happens. And a lot of people think that you can just go do an activation and activate your DNA when you get into this realm of work, and that's gonna be done, like you said. But healing is so important, to clear out the limitations of your prosperity or of your wealth
Mm-hmm.
consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And in a really quick way, can you describe energetically what happens when healings of these pieces are happening? So, do you see them as molecules just leaving the space, or how do you perceive it? Everyone perceives it a little differently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, for example, somebody might be born into, a peasant stock, right? A peasant, Russian peasant stock, for example. And they have been, beings that just lived, communally and lived off the earth, and money wasn't even really part of their reality. They just, contributed to each other, grew their food, made their own fabrics, all that whole type of thing. So that's something that's actually in the DNA, right? So identifying that and deleting those aspects, and then other lifetimes, for example, where we have taken vows of poverty, or we've been impoverished and living on the street, or we were super wealthy, and the revolution came and burned our house, all of these traumatic experiences, all of that is still imprinted in our DNA, right? And it's 7 generations forward and 7 generations back, and that's from this timeline that we're in now. So it's really about identifying that, and perceiving that on a intuitive level, but also perceiving that on an energetic level. And sometimes, when I'm in that realm, I am seeing, past life experiences that, I see them visually as if they're almost dreams, right? So then, and it's really important for people to, be strong to whatever these experiences were, as opposed to being energetically weak. Because if they're energetically weak, then there's still, sort of a weak link that could then end up, creating future weaknesses. So yeah, deleting all of those right down to the quantum level. And then what I end up perceiving is that there's this space of neutrality, right? And then people are capable of being sort of impenetrable and moving forward without getting triggered, without getting weakened energetically. Have I answered your question?
Yeah. So that's definitely the pathway, and the main point I wanted to share with people is just that, like, how far back these limitations can go, and how
Mhm.
these DNA level, like, just because you are inheriting the DNA of the generations before, physically in your cellular level it comes with you, but also energetically and quantumly it arrives with you as well. So if you don't do that cleanup work, then you are not undercutting yourself, but you're doing yourself a disservice for giving you the full potential of realizing what you're fully able to create. Now, let's talk about the other side of this, right? When you are in full creation mode, I know you talk a lot about creatrix as well, and full prosperity mode and full synchronistic wealth, what do you envision for the world? Like, what do you see as possible? Because you say, part of our work is really to uplift and raise this consciousness as the world is ascending. So when it is in the best case scenario, what do you see for this world?
What do I see? And I just want to mention, so much is going on in regards to poverty consciousness occurring on the planet right now. And that's a deliberate attack on the creative capacity that us as conscious beings have to see new possibilities on the world, right? In the world, on the planet right now. So it's prosperity is the energy of creation and the joy of that creation. So once you're in the joy of creating, and there are infinite possibilities for you to create whatever it is that brings you joy in the world, right, and contributes to humanity, there's value there. And it doesn't even matter if paper money is useless and you don't have cryptocurrency and you don't have metals, right, in your investment portfolio. Once you realize the value that you have, you can contribute to other people, and that's going to end up creating a whole new sort of economy, right, or sense of commerce on the planet. So there are so many new technologies, for lack of a better word, right? I don't mean like, computer technology or anything like that, just technologies in regards to human evolution, how we're capable of healing one another, DNA activations that are happening, all of these superpowers that seem to be coming in for, light workers, star seeds, awakening human beings, right, to end up offering to humanity, right? That's going to sort of transcend this whole, allopathic doctor system and the way things are done now. That is, it's there's going to be this evolution that goes beyond that. So once we align with our purpose, and that can end up changing too, right? Like, I mean, I've got multiple things that are on the go, and there are other beings as well that have, multiple things to contribute to humanity, right? So it's this process of flow, And it's this process of, connection with others who require your expertise, or end up being a catalyst just by being with somebody and sharing your energy with somebody. It's like pieces of the puzzle all sort of coming together, and, we're connecting, and we're inevitably activating people who end up being drawn to us. And that's happening right down to the quantum level, right? So that activation is going to start percolating in their beingness and also recalibrating them. And new frequencies are going to end up occurring, and their reality is also going to end up changing, right? So I see it as being us uniting with one another and creating our own communities. And because those of us that are choosing consciousness, and those of us that are choosing to actualize our higher unity consciousness, our Christ consciousness in our beingness, there are so many multidimensional beings that are also here helping humanity shift beyond the atrocities that are occurring right now, right? So once we trust that that is all going to be taken care of, and all we need to do is hold that space, it's just going to end up being this whole new calibration of a conscious humanity that is going to live in love and flow and equality and, yeah, magic, really, right? Like multidimensional magic, all of these incredible things that are just going to end up showing up. I don't know, did I answer your question there?
It's I love your vision, and this is a lot of people might think this is optimistic, and they might think that it is very, very optimistic. However, we are put on earth to, if you are on this mission, you are put on earth to support, a and create the reality that you want, right? We always talk about be the change that you're here to see, or that you want to see. And so whether that's large or small, whatever that is in your mission, it's it's important to do the healing that's necessary so that you can get the support from a higher level, or whatever support in your physical world to go on your mission. And I think that's really what you're bringing out. It's that purpose that each person has, and your position and your role in this humanity as the
Mm-hmm.
humanity is shifting at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And we've got this 9 to 5 work hard kind of give up my life for my business programming that has been sort of inbred in us, really. Working hard, you got to work hard to make money, and all these other make compromises, blah blah blah. And it's really important to remember that we need to be in our joy, because once we're in our joy and the energy of creation, it does not feel like work, right? And we have a team of multidimensional beings that are with us that are also here to help us. So it's not like we're having to do everything by ourselves either. And everything on the planet is contributing to us energetically. The earth is, the trees are, the water is, the air is. So once we receive that contribution and embody all of those energies, then we're operating as infinite beings, and we don't have to play in that realm of working hard to you know create the life that we want either. And I think the more we set the intention, the more we allow ourselves to receive, because it really is about receiving too, right? Without putting our barriers up. And so many of us have put boundaries around ourselves or shut parts of ourselves down for whatever reason it is, right? Whether we've been hurt, or traumas, or what, and once we deal with those and put our barriers down, then we're in this place of the universe gifting to us, and in this place of receiving and creating with the energies that we end up receiving too, right? So it's this beautiful synergy that ends up occurring.
I love that you're bringing this up, and that is what synchronistic wealth is. When we
Absolutely.
it's purely that. And so instead of forcing success, instead of
Mhm.
forcing prosperity, you're receiving, you're working in tandem with, you are dancing with the energies of the universe, and that it's bringing you, as you're putting out, there is a feedback loop. There's like this inside outside flow that's happening. And I love that you're taking us here in this conversation, because we can so easily forget that we are these powerful creators, and we can so
Mhm.
easily get into our heads and our egos about it and forget that there's so much more that's available when you choose to explore it, or when you choose to heal, so that you have that opportunity to see that.
Mhm.
So as we were talking about this, what are some of the last frontiers, as even for people who are enlightened and are conscious, why is it that some people are still having a hard time um, with that level of trust? Because each time you're given a vision, sometimes that vision is almost large. Most of the time, when you've conquered one level, that vision becomes larger and larger, and it does sometimes get confronting of you having to say yes to that vision again, and then you're hitting up some walls. And sometimes that vision is related to, creating more wealth, not only just for yourself but for humanity, or creating this version of reality and having that be more prevalent.
Mhm.
So why is it that there's so many levels, and how do you see that, as you're up leveling in your and prosperity consciousness? How do you
Mhm.
see the game getting, evolving as you're up leveling, like in the later stages or middle to
Mhm.
later stages?
Yeah, and I think it's really important not to create from ego, right? And I've been receiving things that I'm here to hold and create and offer humanity, and y- I can't figure them out with my cognitive mind, right? Because it hasn't gone there before. So the frequencies and the possibilities that are coming in now for us, we can't figure out with our minds or even our brains, because all of that's been controlled and limited, right? So it's really about higher mind, higher source connection, higher self connection, soul connection, and communicating with, the avatar consciousness that we have, and our teams of light beings and guides that are here to assist us in our journey as well, and really moving into the heart. And I mean, that's our new brain, right? Our higher heart is activating, and it's comes from ninth dimensional energy that's right here, right? And we have the capacity to now align with and embody, up to 12th dimension, and some of us even beyond that, right? So it's really about going beyond the program limitations of 3D, and then the fears, right? Because when you first asked me that question, it's just like when someone is struggling, it's like they're still stuck in the old way of creating, and they still have fears, right? That are, and contraction as well, and that could just be from working hard and exhaustion, and needing that to be deleted from the body and the being energetically, right? So that they're in this place of quantum activation, which is coming from divine creation, and embodying that and being that, and then that just ends up guiding you to where you're supposed to be, for this, next piece of your puzzle to end up, landing in your life, right? Like, as you said, synchronistic wealth creation, it's all about synchronicity. And you need to be in an open space of wonder, right? As and child wonder, and oh wow, hey, there we go. So this works out absolutely beautifully. You're the next person that is my client, or you have this piece of information for me. Thank you so much, right? It really is. And that's liberated too, right? Liberated wealth consciousness, like, which is so part of your vision and your tribe. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about some of the people who, 9 to 5 for a long time, corporate ladder, at the top, maybe have a
Mhm.
family, and then suddenly have this awakening that's like, you know what, this is, they listen to this information, or and they've been considering this for a while. And when so much is at stake, what would you say to someone like that, as you're making the transition? Because to live from a trust first perspective is
Mhm.
it is a leap of faith, and it
Mhm.
does take some form of a learning curve to really learn how to live this way, because it's so different from the education system or the societal system. And it is a sense of freedom. You do learn the ropes of this and understand how to integrate
Mhm.
these ways. So yeah, what's your response to that?
I think that there is a way people can look at that transition pragmatically, right? And say, okay, this doesn't feel right for me anymore. I don't want to be here. This is, not contributing to my soul evolution. I'm unhappy. When I come home from work, my family is unhappy. So it's really setting the intention and asking the universe to show you where your next place is. And I think it's really important for people that are in that corporate world to also end up embodying greater aspects of their soul, right, and their heart consciousness, and that can start to happen just by setting intention and aligning with the awakening energies that are showing up on the planet. And once you're in that space, doors will open up for you. And there's just the whole practicalities of, me and my family require this much money per month. How can I sort this, put some in savings, start connecting with or creating other, your own business or whatever it is. And just being practical but also brave and determined, and being just following your heart and working with the multidimensional energies, and being strong for that vision too, right? Like aligning on a quantum level, activating that, and moving forward with finding your new mission. Because some people are afraid to move into, many people are, change is a scary thing for a lot of human beings, right? So, and some of us are moving into uncharted territories too, right? So really looking at your fears that end up showing up, right? Because we've got, and there's shadow aspects of ourselves too that we need to acknowledge, look at, speak with, embrace, right, and heal, so that we don't have self-sabotage end up showing up, or other aspects of our shadow that end up destroying, because that's what does end up happening a lot of time if our shadow is not looked at or dealt with. It destroys the infinite possibilities that could end up occurring, where we live this beautiful, aligned, conscious, earth loving, humanity loving reality, right, while we're contributing from our heart in the joy of our mission being actualized and shared as well, right?
I love it. I love it. And another thing that came up as well, that is not binary. It's not like you do this 95 or it's not. Like what I'm hearing from you, Ariadne, as you're bringing this up, as you're considering change, you are in communion with the universe. So you can also ask for a
Absolutely.
more gentle transition. You can ask for a smoother one. And just like you said, you don't have to go from like 100% success to like 0% and go work up from that. Wealth and prosperity and this idea of synchronistic wealth happens when you can transition in a more lateral way as well,
Mhm.
if you choose to do the inner work that's required for you to be able to receive at that level in this new paradigm, so this new wealth paradigm that we're speaking about right now, right? And you won't know that it exists unless you try it, and unless you really commit to it for a period of time so that you can actually experience it from this level. So there is a level of trust that's important, but it's also, you've got to go first before you can lead in this place as well. So I
Mhm.
just really want to thank those who are watching, who are, you're intrigued by this, maybe you're already on this path, that to not worry so much about the fears, right? The fears are just signposts of where else we can clear on a quantum level, or where else we
Mhm.
can clear on an emotional level, like what you were
Mhm.
mentioning, Ariadne.
Mhm. Mhm.
And also just making sure that, you know, that you're advancing and you're getting more and more aligned to your mission or your path, and you can bring that consciousness, like what you were saying as well, into your workplace. So that might change the constructs or the way that people interact around you as well. So there's a lot of ways that this can manifest, and doesn't have a cookie cutter way in which it will look like.
Mm-mm.
And that's the infinite possibility aspect of it. And your unique way, your unique mission, your unique space that and role that you're holding in your life is the blueprint of where this consciousness is going to flow through, and keep what it's aligned and drop everything that's unaligned. So
And
thank
what
you
I'm
for
sort of,
taking us here.
yeah, no, not a problem. And what I'm perceiving, there's just this like dark force sort of energy. And I think that might just be sort of the collective unconsciousness of people who may be viewing this summit and this creation is we don't want to sabotage ourselves. Often we end up creating sabotage because we are afraid of change, right? So there's this held energy, and when we do the activation at the end of the interview here, there's this really held dark force energy that is preventing that change from occurring, right? So and that often ends up coming in from the ego and other extraneous lower vibrational energies that are we end up sort of creating within ourselves or holding onto within ourselves, once again, because of that fear of change and that fear of going into the unknown, right? So just really be conscious of where your thought is as a human being, right? That's viewing this, where your emotional body is and your fears, and really taking the time to look at those and love those and transform those, right, with the higher vibration that you truly are as a being, and not judge yourself um, or even hurt yourself, right? Because we end up having these self-punishment programs that end up running in our unconsciousness as well, that often prevent us from fear of, succeeding and all of those kinds of things too, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, like what if you can succeed in both of these worlds, in your third dimensional corporate world or whatever world you're in, and also in a world where you are fully connected to all aspects of yourself?
Mhm.
Asking questions like that, um, and then also noticing what we talked about earlier on in this conversation about alignment. Are you, as you're watching this, are you constricting your body, physical body? Are you feeling constricted, or are you feeling expanded? And that's a really easy way to see what's your source, or are you in alignment with how you're feeling, right? So are your emotions and your feelings in alignment with your highest source? So usually you understand source as when you're expanded and when you feel relaxed. So if you are constricted and you're coming from a place of fear or ego, then that is the opposite of relax and peace. And
Mhm.
so just these are some great notes to take, so that we can go into the next section of this interview and clear some of this for you, so that you can receive information from a space of complete openness. And it doesn't mean that you have to change now, it's just giving you the opportunity to be ready to change if you so choose to.
And I think it's really important too, because everyone, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have been gung ho about this whole law of attraction, and that comes from that can often come from a place of like forcing myself to be in the resonant frequency of what I want to end up attracting. And it might not really be the highest contribution to ourselves, our lives, and the expansion of our consciousness too, right? So there has to be this law of sort of correspondence to what we want to receive, or are here to end up receiving from ourselves as fully awakened multidimensional beings, and with that purpose. Because once we're in that purpose and aligned with that purpose, that flow of that purpose, it's effortless. We don't have to, keep on, okay, I'm manifesting this and I got to be at this resonant frequency and I got to make sure, it's really about just being an allowance and love and support and trust of it showing up too, right? So yeah, there's a lot more ease with it than just being this like manifesting magnet and putting your energies out like that too.
I
Does
just
that make sense?
remember when I first started, when I like totally moved on from the law of attraction. But when I first did it in like 2008, it was like, oh, editing all my words. Oh man, I said this word that has like a negative frequency. Oops, I have to, say something else now, and just like edit my thought process. And what you were saying, there is something that in the spiritual world we call false ascension timelines or false ascension pathways, and that basically, in other words, means you're creating from a place of ego, as opposed to creating from a place of source or creating from a place of alignment. And I think the main fear here oftentimes is the fear of not being able to trust your flow and not being able to trust that source really does have everything available. You're like, how can this be possible? I have to work hard in order to get that,
Mm-hmm,
you know?
mm-hmm,
And that's
mm-hmm,
one of the poverty consciousnesses, potentially, right?
mm-hmm.
Because if your rule in your world is you have to work in order to get that, then even if you get something in ease and even if you get something in flow, you wouldn't recognize that as something that you deserve to receive. And then it goes back to the deservingness and worthiness of actually being able to receive unconditionally. You have to have a condition in order to receive.
Mm-hmm.
So that comes back to that.
And it doesn't have to show up in a way that you think it's going to show up, right? It's like, okay, I'm leaving the corporate world. I know it's time for me to leave the corporate world. This is the way I'm going to go and do it. This is what makes sense for me in regards to going ahead and doing it. But once again, being in that trust, being in that realm. Okay, where am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to go? It gives you the space to allow it to show up in ways you never even thought possible, right? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And then for those of you who are in entrepreneurship and those of you who are already far along this path, your next iteration of change, right? As you're attracting or as you're in vibration with your synchronistic wealth, it's also not having a cookie cutter box. You're like, okay, this is the way of what synchronistic wealth needs to look like, or this is the way it looks like. No, again, it's also about giving yourself that infinite possibility for it to show up, putting that intention out there, and then doing your work that you need to do in order to create this, and then also letting go, right? There's an element of ease and flow and space and natural energy that embodies and blankets you in the process. And the summit, as an example, right? It could be this really stressful thing where I have like 20,000 to-do lists to do. And the way that it's being put together, the way that it's being delivered, in the beginning, I kind of defaulted to that mode of being and that mode of execution and that mode of, okay, I set this plan, I'm going to execute it, every single thing down to the T's and the I's, and then I just let it go and allowed it to take its own form and own life. And as a result, sometimes I'm like, am I being lazy here? I'm actually still able to dance and to do some hobbies while running this. So you know each level of each level that you're working on, what I'm perceiving for myself is that you learn more and more how to integrate that grace and that ease and that flow in the same space as your mission, as something that does require a level of concentration, focus, and execution.
I think that's really beautiful that you mentioned that you have time for art and you have time for dance, because that's about balance and harmony, and that is so important, right? We have bodies and our bodies have their own consciousness, and we need to honor our bodies and move our bodies. And as we end up doing that, we end up then creating more space and more movement and more flow for things to end up showing up in our life as well. It's not just about working continuously, and even being in the joy of work doesn't even feel like working, but yeah, balance and harmony and being out with the earth and being with our families and eating good food. And there's so many wonderful things to include in the creation of our life, right? And all of that is part of prosperity consciousness too, right? And all of that is part of wealth as well. So it's not just about how much money you've got in the bank or your investments. It's really, about everything that you end up doing and receiving and creating and loving and embodying, right?
Yeah, Yeah. So we're going to activate all of our prosperity consciousnesses and take away some of the stuff that's holding us back on a quantum level. And so in a moment, we're going
Ooh.
to do that. So get comfortable wherever you are. You can do this lying down or seated in meditation positions. So you can just pause it right here and get ready. And then we're going to get into it.